There's a strange moment that hits you in your 30s. You wake up one day and you're finally old enough to understand that you could have done better. In one of my previous videos, I spoke about how enough you already are. But today, I want to talk to you about the other side of the truth. And if you are in your 20s, I want you to stay till the end. Because what I'm going to share comes straight from hard experiences and even harder lessons. These are the 7 things I genuinely wish I had done differently in my 20s. Not because I regret my life, I don't, but because I now understand how powerful those early years truly were. How much easier life could have been if I had been more strategic. How many detours I could have avoided. How much peace, progress, and clarity I could have created for myself. So if you're in your 20s or even your early 30s, stay with me till the end because this video might wake you up the same way life woke me up. And before we dive in, please make sure you subscribe so that we can keep making more videos like this. So here's the first one. I wish I hadn't romanticized dropping out of college. Dropping out of college is a very seductive fantasy. You hear stories of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, or sports icons like Ronaldo or Virat Kohli who did not follow the traditional education route. And as young people, we connect the dots in the worst possible way. If they drop out, maybe I should too. But here's a truth nobody says loudly because it's not fancy enough for a viral content. Most of the successful dropouts you hear about had one of the two things: unbelievable talent or unbelievable resources. Bill Gates did not drop out of a random college. He dropped out of Harvard. His mother was already a board member at IBM. He was extremely well read from a very young age and he wasn't confused about life. Zuckerberg did not drop out because he was lost. He dropped out because he had already built Facebook inside Harvard's dorms. Most sports stars did not casually skip school. They spent their entire childhood inside academies, training every single day from age 6. These people are outliers, but what young people conveniently forget is that for every outlier success story, there are millions who drop out and never recover. I went to college as a school topper and still came out with just pass marks. Later, I even dropped out of my MBA. Yes, I grew in my corporate career without an MBA, but I can say with complete honesty that I could have done much better if I had stayed focused, studied well, and used education as an advantage instead of rebelling against it. I convinced myself that education didn't matter, that doing something different automatically meant I was doing something superior. But here's what I eventually learned. Education is not just about degrees, it's about discipline too. The assignments, the exams, the deadlines, the pressure, the structure, all of it is training you for the real world. Performing well academically, getting into good colleges, and building a strong academic record doesn't guarantee you success, but it gives you a foundation and a mental discipline that makes success easier. And here's the biggest irony of it all. All those famous dropouts we admire, they send their own children to school. They send them to elite colleges. They don't ask their kids to skip college. Why? Because they know the truth. Dropping out works for a tiny fraction of people, but education gives an upper hand to millions. And here's something else I want you to pay attention to. Most people who loudly declare that education doesn't matter are either the rare ones who made it without it, or they're simply not thinking clearly. People project their insecurities as philosophies. Observe people's choices, not their statements. Your 20s are the decades where you need more options. You need open doors, not closed ones. And education gives you options. If your parents are financially strong, leverage it. Get into the best school or college you can. Use the system to your advantage. It's one of the few things in life that pays you back 1,000 times. Don't throw away an advantage just because a few outliers made it without one. Number 2, I wish I had read more books. I didn't grow up as a reader. I read newspapers and magazines here and there, but books always felt like something serious people read: scholars, toppers, nerds. I thought reading was boring, slow, and unnecessary. But in my late 20s and early 30s, I finally started reading consistently, and it genuinely changed everything for me. Looking back, I realized something painfully obvious. Books are shortcuts. They're time machines. They're years of wisdoms compressed into a few hundred pages. They let you sit with minds of people who have lived failed, succeeded, experimented, explored, and learned far more than you will ever learn in one lifetime. You can absorb someone's 40 years of life experience in 4 hours. You can learn skills people took decades to master without spending decades yourself. And if I could go back, I wouldn't just read casually, I would read obsessively and consistently, because reading does two things that almost nothing else can do. First, it expands your mind, it shows you possibilities you didn't know existed, and it challenges the limitations you build unconsciously. Second, it sharpens your skills, communication, empathy, creativity, problem solving, decision making, clarity. All of these are shaped by the words you consume. People often think reading is only about information, but the act of sitting with a book for 200 pages builds focus, discipline, and patience. These qualities spill into every other area of your life. If I had read even 50 to 100 books in my early 20s, I would have entered my late 20s with a different mindset, different opportunities, different confidence, and a very different level of self awareness. I would have become more articulate, more skilled, more grounded, and definitely more clear about what I wanted. Books reshape your identity in subtle but powerful ways. If you are young right now, read widely, read about psychology, money, history, leadership, philosophy, habits, creativity, biographies. Don't just read to finish books. Read to upgrade your mind, read to stretch your thinking, read to see life through better lenses. And if you're still watching this video, pause for a moment and comment one book you wish to read. Start with that and let it change you. And number three, I wish I had traveled more. When I look back at my 20s, one thing that bothers me more than I expected is how little I traveled. Not because I didn't want to, but because I kept postponing it for no good reason. I had this idea in my head that travel was something you do when you are financially settled, when your career is stable, when your life becomes organized and predictable. I kept telling myself one day, without realizing that the real cost of postponing travel wasn't money. It was missed exposure, missed learning, missed perspective. And what I didn't understand back then was that travel is not about luxury, it's about expanding your mind. Even a simple trip to a nearby city taught me more about people, culture, humility, and adaptability than half the experiences I wasted my time on. In your 20s, your mind is flexible, you absorb things quickly, and every new environment shapes your thinking in a deep way. Travel does something to your personality. It builds confidence, it removes fear, it challenges your assumptions. It teaches you how to deal with discomfort, and most importantly, every place you visit adds a layer to the who you are. And I missed many layers that could have shaped me earlier. It makes you realize that the world is much bigger than the small problems you keep circling in your head. Most young people don't realize that travel doesn't have to be exotic, it just has to expose you to something different from your daily routine. Travel doesn't just take you to new places, it changes the way you see your world, your perspective about the places you travel to. For example, before I had traveled to a few African countries for business, people told me that I might be kidnapped. But once I landed there, the experience was quite amazing. Lovely places, lovely people, lovely food, and I made some good relationships too. When you're old, you can still travel, but the experience is not the same. Your body becomes more sensitive, your schedule becomes tighter, responsibilities increase, and your spontaneity disappears. In your 20s, all you need is willingness. If you're watching this and you're in your 20s, don't wait like I did. Don't postpone it thinking there's a perfect time. Travel wherever you can, even if it's just a budget trip with friends, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. And number four, I wish I had built great people skills. Another major thing I completely misunderstood in my 20s was how important people skills are. I genuinely believe that if I worked hard, performed well, and stayed sharp, everything else would fall into place. I thought talent and effort automatically guaranteed growth. But real life taught me something very different. Your technical skills may get you the job, but your people skills decide how far you go. Looking back, I realized how unprepared I was when it came to understanding people. I didn't know how to read intentions, I didn't know how to communicate without sounding harsh, I didn't know how to manage disagreement without making them personal. I didn't know how to talk to the senior leaders with confidence, and I didn't know how how to handle difficult personalities without losing my patience. Your people management skills plays a pivotal role in your success, yet nobody teaches them. And because I didn't learn these skills early, I made my professional journey harder than it needed to be. I misunderstood situations simply because I wasn't emotionally aware, and I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted and doubted people who actually supported me. These are not soft skills, these are survival skills in the real world. And if I had developed good people skills in my 20s, my career would have been much smoother, faster, and far less stressful. I don't mean being fake or pretending to be overly sweet. People skills are about understanding behavior, knowing how different people operate, how different personalities react, and adjusting your communication without losing your authenticity. It's about empathy, clarity, self awareness, and timing. It's knowing when to speak, when to stay quiet, and when to walk away. It's knowing how to stand your ground without disrespect and how to negotiate without aggression. I wish I had read more about human psychology, observed people more, asked more questions, and taken the times to understand how humans think and behave. If you are in your 20s, don't ignore this the way I did. Start paying attention to how people behave, how teams function, how emotions drive decisions, and how communication shapes outcome. Because at the end of the day, no matter how talented you are, your growth will always depend on how well you can deal with people. Number 5, I wish I had learned money management early. Out of everything I messed up in my 20s, money management is one of those areas where the consequences came much later, but they came consistently. In my early 20s, I earned decent salaries for my age, and that became the problem. Because the moment I started earning well, I started spending well. And by spending well, I don't mean I lived like a millionaire, but I simply lived beyond my actual means without even realizing it. I had absolutely no understanding of how money works. I didn't know how credit cards function. I didn't understand investments. I didn't know anything about emergency funds. And budgeting was something I thought only struggling people did. Basically, I was financially illiterate, and that's the case for most young people because nobody teaches finance properly. Schools don't talk about it, parents rarely discusses it openly, and society definitely never prepares you for it. So, like most young adults, I learned about money through mistakes instead of mentors. And the painful part is that the mistakes were not huge, it was the collection of hundreds of small, careless habits, eating out constantly, impulsive shopping, buying things just to feel good, signing up for a random subscription I never used, trying to maintain a lifestyle that wasn't aligned with my income, and treating money casually as if it would keep coming forever. What I did not understand back then is money has very little to do with maths. It's emotional and psychological. It's about behavior, discipline, self-awareness, and if you don't build those things early, the lack of discipline will show up later in the form of stress, debt, and unnecessary pressure. And when I look back now, I realize how easily I could have avoided so much financial anxiety if I had simply learned the basics early, living below my means, saving before spending, understanding the power of compounding, investing even small amounts consistently, avoiding lifestyle creep, and building financial discipline before trying to build a lifestyle. These things sound simple, but when you don't practice them in your 20s, life forces you to learn them in your 30s and 40s, and by then the cost is much higher. One thing I can tell you with complete honesty is life hits much harder when you're financially unprepared, and life becomes significantly easier when you have basic financial discipline. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't chase brands, restaurants, gadgets, or short-term pleasure. I would chase financial stability because money doesn't solve your problems, but financial ignorance multiplies every problem you already have. Number 6, I wish I had thought more positively. One of the biggest internal mistakes I made in my late 20s and early 30s was slowly drifting away from the natural optimism I had when I was younger. In my early 20s, I genuinely believed that life could get better, that growth was possible, and good things could happen if I worked hard and stayed consistent. I did not question it, that belief came naturally, but somewhere along the way, after a few setbacks, a few disappointments, and a few wrong turns, I slipped into something I thought was maturity, but was actually a trap: negative realism. It sounds intelligent, it feels responsible, it feels rational, it makes you believe you're being practical, but the truth is, negative realism doesn't prepare you for life, it quietly limits you. It makes you underestimate yourself before the world even gets a chance to. It shrinks your ambitions, it makes you assume the worst outcomes before you've even tried. It blinds you from opportunities because you're too busy calculating risk. It gives you the false comfort that you are protecting yourself, but in reality, you are just blocking your own progress. What I didn't understand back then is that positivity doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It doesn't mean you expect miracles in unreasonable situations. It doesn't mean you walk away into your funeral expecting the dead to wake up. Real positivity is much simpler. It means leaving space for a better outcome. It means acknowledging challenges while still making room for possibilities. It means saying to yourself, maybe this can work. Maybe I can improve. Maybe life can get better. Maybe the situation is not as hopeless as I'm assuming. And your mindset is like a lens. If the lens is cracked and dirty, you will see the world through that distortion. Everything will look darker, heavier, and harder than it really is. But if the lens is clear, suddenly more paths appear, more solutions appear, and more opportunities feel reachable. Looking back now, I wish I had protected my optimism instead of letting life corrode it. I wish I had stayed curious instead of cautious. I wish I had held onto the belief that good things are possible instead of slipping into self-doubt and overthinking. Because the truth is, life doesn't always reward the smartest person. It rewards the one who keeps hope alive long enough to try again. If I could go back, I would choose a mindset that gives me possibilities, not one that steals them. I would keep my optimism intact, not blindly but consciously, with awareness and balance. Positive thinking is not magic, it's simply the refusal to kill your own chances before life even tests them. Number 7, I wish I had built the right habits early and dropped the wrong ones. When I think about my 20s, one thing that stands out clearly is how casually I treated my habits. I never truly understood the things you repeat every day, the way you sleep, the way you eat. In my 20s, I had perfect opportunity to build solid habits. I had more energy, fewer responsibilities, I was more flexible, and I had far more control over my schedule. But I wasted all of that. My sleeping habits were terrible. I slept late for no reason and treated rest like it was optional. I didn't realize how powerful good sleep is for your mind, mood, and productivity. And I didn't value fitness or movement either. I exercised in phases. Some months I was active, other months I did nothing. And I didn't take my physical health seriously because, like most people in their 20s, I assumed my body could handle anything. And the truth is, your body does handle it in your 20s, but it quietly keeps the bill, and in your 30s, it starts collecting. This is something nobody really tells you. Habits that feel harmless in your 20s, irregular sleep, poor eating, no exercise, drinking too often, smoking, scrolling endlessly, wasting time without purpose, they all leave marks. Some marks are physical, some are psychological, some are emotional, and I learned this the hard way. In my mid-30s, I had to put in a lot of effort, consistency, and discipline to undo the damage I caused through years of neglect. And undoing damage is always harder than preventing it. What I also didn't understand in my 20s is how important time management is. I treated time like it was infinite. I procrastinated, delayed things, wasted hours on distractions, and lived without a real sense of structure. I didn't understand that time is not just something you manage, it's something you have to respect. When you treat your time casually, life treats your progress casually. Looking back, I should have built simple but powerful habits that supported my growth. These things are not glamorous, but they make your life dramatically easier. Good habits make success smoother. Bad habits make everything unnecessarily difficult. And if I could go back, I would use my 20s to build the kind of lifestyle that would carry me strongly into my 30s and 40s, instead of spending my 30s fixing the mistakes of my 20s. Habits determine your energy, your clarity, your discipline, your mindset, and even your opportunities. And the biggest truth is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. And I wish I had understood this much earlier. Your 20s are one of the strangest phases of your life. They feel confusing, fast, chaotic, directionless. Most of the time, you don't even realize how important they are while you're living them. But when you look back later, you understand that your 20s were not just another decade, they were the foundation of everything that comes after. The biggest lesson from everything I shared is, Life always gives you opportunities, but it also gives you consequences. And both arrive whether you're ready or not. The earlier you understand the right principles, the smoother your life becomes. The earlier you correct your mistakes, the fewer regrets you carry. The earlier you build discipline, the more freedom you create later. And if you are in your 20s right now and you're watching this video, you're already ahead of where I was at your age. You're already thinking, reflecting, questioning, and improving, and that itself puts you miles ahead. Growth doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in small awareness like this. And if you're even slightly more intentional than I was, your 30s, 40s, and 50s will look completely different. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Share it with one friend who needs this and leave a comment on what area are you planning to take on. And please stay subscribed.